Hi, this is Gary, and today I'm going to go over seeding for transplants. And if you're new to the channel, thanks for coming, for clicking. If you've been here before, thanks for coming back. And main thing I'm trying to go through today, I'm not going to try to show any secret sauce, any special way of doing it. It's just some basic things that I've done in the past, some mistakes that I've made, some things I've done right. Of showing you how to grow transplants. Now, transplants are getting very expensive at the store. I mean, they're over $5 a piece sometimes for a tomato transplant or a broccoli transplant. And I'm gonna kind of go over kind of the whole deal of it, so you won't be tempted and won't be intimidated by doing the transplants. First thing I'm gonna go over is planting depth, and a lot of times that's something that will, and you're a gardener, will make a mistake on, because if you get this here is carrot seeds. Okay, come here, Patrick. No, just put your hand up. There you go, to show them. I can't get close enough. Okay, those seeds are really tiny, and those type of seeds, if you're going to try to seed those, now I wouldn't put those in a transplant, and I'll explain that later, but you just set those on top of there and probably leave them alone. Might put just a little bit of covering on it. I don't even do that. And the reason I say that, I had a guy one time, he was a teenager, and he came to me and said, you know, we planted the carrots and they didn't come up. And my first go-to is saying, well, you know, need to add more water, whatever. So show me how you planted them. So he walked out there, it was a raised bed, he took his finger and he stuck it in the ground about this deep. And he said, and then then I took a carrot seed and put in the bottom of that seed, and I covered it up. And so you do that for all of them. I said, well, the mistake he made, and I was being a little bit of a jerk, and I did show him how to do it later, or right after it. I said, you need to go take you some little pebbles and put beside each one of those. He said, because those plants are never going to see the light of day, and those little pebbles can serve as a little tombstone. And he said, what? I said, dude, 1/4 inch at the most, and really I wouldn't go that deep on a carrot seed. That's all they need, so you can actually throw them on top of the ground. So kind of know how deep you need to get them. You can't plant too deep. You can plant a little bit too shallow. If you plant them too shallow, sometimes you'll get what's called deadheads on your tomatoes or your pepper plants, because it doesn't have enough friction to pull that the seed head off of the coating around that seed head. But get the right planting depth. No, you just don't want to get them too deep, but you also have to keep that wet on top. You don't want them to dry out. But get the planting depth right. I even did that one time in in-ground gardening. I went out there and I had a new wheel hoe, which is a great little instrument if you're trying to control weeds, but it also had a plow attachment on it. So I went and plowed me a furrow, and I plowed it once. It worked so good, I went to plow it down again. I got the thing probably about that deep. Planted my bean seeds. Waited for a week. Nothing happened. About a week and a half, one plant kind of off to the side, because I still had my dill up there, came up, and I got to thinking, how deep am I supposed to plant? So I went back and read the package about how deep I was supposed to plant them. It was 1 inch, and they never came up. I probably should have got me a big rock and put it into my road, but because they're not going to come up. And the bad thing about that one was, by that time it was too late. It was a fall planting of beans. It got too late before I could plant another crop. So, you know, I missed out on that 50-foot row of beans that year. But just get the planting right. We've all made that mistake. If you plant it too deep, almost everybody's done that at one point in time. With tomato seeds, 1/4 inch or less. And I'll go ahead and show y'all. I was kind of wondering when I was going to do this. I'm going to go ahead and do this now. This here is my pepper tray that I've got. I don't leave these out. I do have I'll show you my setup inside. But basically, this right here, now this is too dry, so I'm going to add a little bit of water to it before I put the seeds on it, because I want to make sure that it's going to have some moisture whenever I put the seed down on it. Okay? Then I'm going to take my pepper seeds. Again, these are teeny tiny seeds. You do want to label your seeds, because if you don't, you're not going to remember, okay? Another mistake I've made in the past. But one per sale, because if you get a good tray like I've got, you're going to have plenty of plants. You can have multiples of plants, so that shouldn't be a problem. I don't like planting more than one per cell because of that. the other thing you'll want to do is make sure you get enough cells to finish that, because the last two, I had enough and they blew and some of the seeds came out. And apparently I lost a couple of them. So I only got 7 seeds. I have 9 trays, but that's okay. Now these seeds are from this plant over here. And you can see good. And it's a variegated pepper, Thai pepper, that I've got still growing on. I did take seeds from it. If anybody's wanting to try some of the seeds, let me know in the comments. I do have a few extra seeds that I can mail to you, and I don't sell anything, so I'm not asking for money. I'm gonna go ahead and put it all the way up to the end and just smooth it out. That's all the covering you need. You can come back. I'm going to water it. I'm going to try to just get a little bit of water on top of this so it's wet on top. Sometimes you'll get a seed like that one, and then once it comes to the top, just mash them down and hope I get in the right tray. Now you can just go ahead and use the this here. I just used potting soil because I was out of the vermiculite was in the shed, and I didn't want to go to the shed, so I just used extra potting mix, which is fine. And that's all you need to do. They're planted, all right? The timing is important. You don't want to plant them too early. All the instructions are going to say, all the instructions most people say is 6 to 8 weeks for a tomato plant. That ain't right if you're growing them in the house, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But you want to know what time that you need to plant these things. We do have a planting guide for our AgriLife Extension agent has put out, our service has put out. Tells you all the dates and times. I do use that a lot, because I don't always remember exactly when. I know I had to go back and look at the garlic. I did plant my garlic late, and that says September, I think, September 15th to October 15th, and I think I planted mine more in November, and they really got a late start, so you know, it's my fault. But on transplants, don't want to plant them too early. Peppers do take longer, but you also want to plant peppers later into the spring. Sometimes people will want to start their starts too late, or they plant their transplants too late. In Texas, down in the south, you have a short growing season to grow tomatoes because July's coming, it's going to wipe everything out. We know that, all right? It's going to happen every year. And so you need to get that done early so that you'll have a time to make the crop. If you wait until your transplants are ready to plant in late April, guess what? You're going to be starting your crop off the first 60 to 90 days when they start coming off, according to tomato varieties. So if it's late April, it's going to be late May, late June. So you're going to start your crop in late June, and you might get a week or two of harvest, and that's going to be it, okay? Get a handful of tomatoes. So start them early if you can. Sometimes you may have to, I try to start mine to where they'll be ready in February 14th for my tomatoes, and I might not plant them then, but I want them to be up, you know, tall, ready to go. I just got through planting mine. I might, if I get a chance, I'll show you the tray of those. They're just now starting to sprout. These are the peppers. I planted peppers a day or two later. They're going to take longer. They'll take 6 to 8 weeks. I do want to plant them later, because peppers cannot take cold weather. They don't like it. They'll stun them for the rest of their life, so you don't want to put them out too early. Tomatoes, they can survive. You can put them out earlier. So, types to transplant. Okay, we've talked about peppers. We've talked about tomatoes. Patrick, go get me those the greens. Greens work really well if you want to plant the greens, and he'll be coming with that tray here in a second. And I'll leave these outside once you get them to going. Just flip it up and kind of show people what they look like. And that's the one with the greens in them. You know, it's got arugula, endive, all different ones. That's good. So they're good to do it. Grab the broccoli. We get them running back and forth there. They're good to go. I mean, broccoli does. And again, since they don't really like the indoor temperatures and the light, so, you know, I do put them back outside. So there are those that are coming on. I have had better luck with fall broccoli than I have spring broccoli, but we'll see this year, see how they do. Things I see at the store, a lot of times you'll see watermelons, and yeah, you can do watermelons, but they have a short, like 3 weeks, I think, after you plant them, you're gonna have to put them out. And what I see in the store, sometimes you'll have, you know, you get these little trays like this, they have 4 of them in it, and those vines will be this long. They're stunted. You know, they don't like you to mess with the roots. Peppers don't like you messing with the roots, so you can't sit there and try to grow them up and stuff. Some plants are okay messing with the roots, some of them aren't. So I would never buy. Plus, it's so stinking easy to plant them out direct for watermelon. So why put them in? Why pay all that money or even my time putting them in a tray? Now, sometimes I do some watermelons, but they're a little bit harder. One that I would never do would be, or I say I'll never do, I never suggest a newer person to do would be corn. Corn is very finicky, and it's not the roots per se, but it's the joint between where the plant's roots connect and to where the stem connects. If that gets messed up, either through low fertility, if you get a drought, or if you're trying to transplant them, it's never going to come out of that, and you get a little short, stubby plant that's not going to produce, you know, a decent ear. So I would never do corn, and I've seen corn up this tall, that in little bitty pots like that. They're not going to do anything for you. Okay, just go ahead and direct seed those. Stuff like carrots, I direct seed those just because, you know, I take the seeds and I'll scratch the soil surface, put the seeds on it, might scratch it again, water it in, that's good. Why spend all that time trying to put one per cell and all that? Plus, if you mess up that taproot, you messed up the carrot. And that's going to rain on us the second time. So, you know, certain ones work well for transplants and other ones don't. I would never buy a transplant for broccoli because it's just way too expensive, but they're all fairly, you know, the only thing about broccoli is they do like to have light, so you can't sit there and leave them inside too long. Bring them outside, put them in the light, you know, let them start growing, because if they ever get leggy on you, they don't recover. It's not like a tomato plant. Lights. Let's talk about the lights. Patrick, going to bring this up and sit here. You don't need special grow lights, okay? That's almost a gimmick. Okay. Now for this tray, it wouldn't work very good, but because you need 2 of them. All right. And I've got a second one. This is just a regular shop light. Okay. This is one's not out of the box yet. They cost, and it's upside down. They cost about $25, maybe $30 now. When I was 25 when I bought these. I do have an extra one. They're not hard, you know. The secret to it though is you want that light. This is an LED light, 1 to 2 inches away from it. This is too far, okay? This is too far away from it. This is too close. They need to be an inch or 2. And that's, you know, an inch or 2 is about this far. You know, I'd want that thing sitting right about there. And when they come up, you can kind of move it up. It's not even going to hurt the leaves if they hit a LED. You know, now if it's a fluorescent light, it can get too hot. It can burn the leaves a little bit, but still, if you put that thing up this high, they're going to be leggy. Period. Okay, I've seen people have them up. You know, they'll put their plants. They got this stuff sitting like this. It's going to be leggy plants. It's not giving it enough light. That's the #1 mistake people make whenever they do transplants. That light's too far away because our eyes adjust to it. We think, hey, that's plenty bright, but it's not. So make sure you get that light correct. Don't buy any fancy lights. They're not worth it. Now, if you was going to try to grow a plant inside and make it fruit, yeah, that's where the grow lights would come in. But just for transplant, a regular LED, a regular fluorescent lights, people have been using those for years. So don't get caught up in the hype and think you have to do those plants in that type of lighting. Okay. And next we're going to talk about seeding. Go ahead. We're starting to rain on us. Sorry about being kind of chaotic, but I did want to kind of show you before we ran inside and tried to run these plants in and out. This is the tray that I got for the tomatoes. The tomatoes are just now starting to come up. You see that broadleaf plant? Let's see if I can do this right there. Okay, that is a weed. and that there is your tomato plant. So sometimes you have to know it. This tray has set outside, so it does have some weeds in it, but they're just now starting to come up, and that's tomato plants just now starting to come up. And like I say, I have them on lights up inside, and we take those back in. And then this is a close-up of the peppers. They're not up yet, but that's what they look like. And I also have some to go ahead and show you. I grew these a few weeks ago, and those are the micro dwarfs, and these are micro dwarfs here. Cute little plants, but you notice they grow a little bit different than your regular tomatoes. They only get about 12 inches tall. Those two there are called Fuzzy Wuzzy. They're a dwarf plant. They'll get about 2 to 3 foot tall. Micro dwarfs are dwarf plants about half the size of the normal plant, usually somewhere between 2 and 4 foot of them growing. And then over here, this is a volunteer dwarf plant, and it just came up on its own this fall, and I went ahead and kept it alive and put it in and out. It's got some blooms on it, and it'll be the first plant tomato that'll make. I do have it, use those little clips to keep it upright, but it'll get up about this high. And so those are the tomatoes I've grown. Now let me go back, show you the rest of the video. One more thing I was going to show you, if you're doing your greens, I planted these from those plants that I had before. I just didn't videotape at the time. And whenever you grow them in transplants, you can go ahead and space them out correctly. That way you're not just scattering seeds out and have to scatter them out like that. So that's what they'll look like once you put them out in the garden. Okay, now we're back to the set position. It's break up for a second and then let up. Next thing I'm going to talk about is seeding mix. If you're going to be growing transplants, you do want to get the seeding mix. You don't want, or seedling mix. You don't want to get the potting mix. The potting mix is kind of clumpy. It's got big, it's got chunks of wood in it, and that's good if you're doing a potting soil because it lets the soil breathe and let the roots have some oxygen. But in a seeding mix, that can block, like right here. You get a lot of these, and that's a fairly big chunk. If you had a seed right underneath there, if it fell right, that could keep that seed from emerging. So again, that's just something I do. If you're going to do a lot of this, start off with the seedling mix, and if you decide you're going to be doing much of this, just make your own. All that seedling mix really is basically is 2/3 peat moss, 1/3 perlite. Mix that together, and that's a seeding mix. And take out any little chunks that might be in there and go on with it. It'll be cheaper that way. If you buy in bulk, it's just a lot cheaper doing it that way. And I'm all for being cheaper if you can do it. Seeding trays. So what you're probably going to do, same thing I've done, you go out and buy these little seeding trays. Okay, they also got bigger ones. They're really flimsy. They break easy. They're really made for 1 year. 1 year use. They're single use really. But you get these trays in it. This ain't the tray that went to it, but you get this out. Sometimes you got to break them up, and then you got to try to go back and use them. It becomes a real problem. The other problem is these things. With this particular one, I don't have that set up anymore. But they fit right in here, and you water them, and that water is going to get down in the bottom, and it's going to sit there. And that's going to cause your seeds to rot or even cause damping off because you got that little water on the bottom, and that's going to keep that stuff super saturated. Seedlings don't like to be kept super wet. They like to be moist, do not like to be wet. So if you can, you stick something in there, you just stick something like this underneath there, put it down there so they're not sitting right there on the bottom, so you won't have a lot of water in them. I do not like these trays. They break easy. Again, it's hard to get the plants out of them. The other trays, they got a big hole in the bottom. You can pop them out. It's not a problem. But I don't. These are good to get started on. But as soon as you can get those big trays like I had, they're PropTech 162 trays. That's the way to go. If you can find them in the store, they're not very expensive. If you have to order them, it's just the fact to ship each you up. You can buy them. If you buy 10 of them, it's pretty cheap. Like $16, $17 a tray. But who needs 10? I bought 10. But the other thing I don't like is these will come with a dome on top of them. Those domes are good for keeping moisture in, for keeping humidity high. You don't need a high humidity once the seeds emerge. So once you see the other tray, when I see the seeds emerging, if I had to put a dome on it, they're coming off right then. Don't let them domes sit on there once your seeds start sprouting. That's just to keep it wet, to get the seeds to sprout, and then once they're starting to sprout, pull them off, because you're going to have all kinds of damping off diseases, leaf diseases, all other stuff that come on it. It's just not a good condition. And that kind of goes into my, I guess where I got kind of number 8 tip. Where are you going to grow them at? Are you going to put them in the house and you keep your house fairly warm, 70 degrees? Or are you going to put them in the garage? One problem with the garage is it's going to get cold at night. It's going to slow it down. That's where that 6 to 8 weeks may come in. And that's if you're down south. These seeds don't like to get cold. And especially pepper plants are extraordinary. And you say, well, they just don't like to get cold. The other thing is, if you're in the basement, now we don't have basements in the south because we don't need basements in the south. The reason you got basements up north is because you got to keep your pipes from freezing, so you have to dig a 10-foot hole to let your pipes come into the house, and then you plumb it up through that floor to keep everything from freezing. Our soils doesn't freeze down here. At the very most, it'll freeze a foot in the ground. Up in the panhandle, a foot and a half is about as deep as it's ever going to freeze. Normally, I haven't lived in the panhandle, so I do kind of hesitate. I live close to the panhandle, up near Childress. Soil just didn't freeze that much. We ran livestock pipelines, and they would very seldom freeze because of the ground freezing. So the other problem I've also noticed, if you have them in the garage and basement, your humidity is higher. So once, I don't have problems with damping off, and I think the main reason is I don't water excessively. Plus, that house has a lot lower humidity than that garden, and way lower than what you have in a basement. So just be aware of that. You may not have a choice, maybe where you have to do it, but just be aware that seeds don't like to be cold. They like peppers like 90 degrees. Okay, and you say, well, number 9, I can use a heat mat. Heat mats are nice. I do not have a heat mat. There's 2 reasons for that. Number 1, they're expensive. And number 2, I haven't really need them because I keep them inside. And my temperature is about 70, 75 degrees. And I do have a fluorescent light fixture that's got 4 bulbs in it. I put that over top of it. And I've read 90, 95 degrees on top of that soil when I got those lights on. So even though the plants have not sprouted yet, I can put that fluorescent lights on them and that would heat it up. And I just use that as my heat mat. If you're using a heat mat, just remember they're designed to raise the temperature about 10 degrees. So if you're getting 60 degrees or 55 degrees in that basement, that's not going to be warm enough to sprout your pepper plants. Probably not warm enough to sprout your tomato plants. So just be aware of that. The only problem with my deal with the fluorescent lights is, I guess you keep on for 24 hours. You don't want to keep lights on 24 hours on plants once they've emerged. But I guess if you're trying to seed it, you could. I don't. I go ahead and turn them off at night. But anyway, sometimes you can use that trick to not have to have a heat mat. Sometimes they'll sprout anyway. But that might be a problem if you keep your house cooler. Is you just need more heat. But you have to put it in the warmer part of your house. And number 10, they're going to need to be fertilized. Okay. If you're using organic fertilizers, I don't use organic fertilizers for my seedlings, and here's why. You're going to have to start fertilizing as soon as you plant those seeds, because it's going to take about 2 weeks. Rule of thumb, 2 weeks for those nutrients to be available to that plant. So if you wait until you get the first true leaves, and the true leaves are the second set of leaves. This right here is not a true leaf. It's the first leaf that comes off. This is what they call a true leaf. So once these emerge, you need to start putting fertilizer down. You'll notice these colors on these are nice dark green. That's because I fertilize them. If they're that kind of pale color, they need some nitrogen. They need the fertilizer. This mix doesn't have fertilizer in it. So potting mix or seeding mixes do not have fertilizer in it. Most of them, the kind that I do, I really don't want that fertilizer in it until I'm ready for those seeds to start taking it in. So be aware of that. I use synthetic fertilizers. There you wait till you see the first true leaves and you put it on there. Within a day you're going to see a difference. Don't fertilize too much. I use the small end of the Miracle Grow with 2 gallons of water. Cut it about half of what you would do for maintenance. Do not use that big end of the spoon. It's going to be too much fertilizer, because that's going to get those plants also to get leggy on you if you got too much nitrogen. That's just what too much nitrogen does. So you got your lights cause you problems, and you're putting too much fertilizer down. So temper down your fertilizer, but they do need fertilizer. But just add a little bit. Always remember that you can add more fertilizer, you can't take it away. So kind of the last is kind of an extra point that I put out here is when you plant your transplants and you're planting tomatoes, and we're all going to hit that day where we got that big tall tomato plant, and it's going to be kind of leggy. You can lay that plant down, dig your trench, and plant over it, and then you'll come up and just keep on growing, because on your tomato plants, it's got all these hairs on it. Well, all those hairs are called adventitious roots, I believe, and they will produce, if they're covered with soil or they touch soil, they will turn into roots. So you can do that, and so that plant won't be as leggy. You know, that's just one of the tricks that you learn. You can also just dig that hole deeper. The only problem with digging them deeper, you're getting into colder soils, and you may be getting into some more of the infertile soils. I've done it digging deeper, and I think I may switch to the other way, because I've noticed when I dug them out later that root ball produced most of the roots, and that was in not as fertile soil. So I may kind of lay it down. The only problem about laying it down, if you come back later and drive a stake in the ground and hit that stem, you're going to break those roots off. It's not going to kill the plant, but it's going to set it back. I have had tomato plants where I had a cutworm cut it off at the ground. I took it back, stuck it back in the ground, put some dirt over it, left it outside, and it re-rooted. It looked bad that first week, but after the first week it kicked up and started growing again. It did not help. It's not a good thing to do, but you can. Now you can start transplants that way. If you're doing for a fall garden, you can take the cuttings and do them that way, but I wouldn't advise it. You know, it works well for that if you got fully grown tomato plant, but you don't want to start a seedling and have that happen to you. But sometimes you don't have a choice. Anyway, one thing I did want to say, if you're a first-time gardener, you haven't tried this yet, and you want to try your hand at it, you know, I have to limit to about 5 people, but if first 5 people, let me know, and I can send you some tomato seeds that I have extra, and so you won't have that expense, and put your expense into the lights. Just get you a decent shop light, be able to plant that. I'll help you out with the seeds and give you 2 or 3 different varieties of seeds so you can start off with. If you enjoyed the video, hit like, and appreciate you subscribe. Thanks. Okay, I promised to show my setup with the lights. I do use these toe straps here to move the lights up and down. This is the 2 lights I have side by side. You have to turn the lights off or it screws up the video even worse. And then here's the 4-foot, here's a bigger light for the fluorescent lights. And I've got it set down lower. It's about that's at the upper limits of what you want to grow it in. That's probably about 4 inches. But anyway, I got this regular baker's rack that I use them on. I could get 4 on there easy. I do have this one. This one here is way up there, because if I do get some big ones, that's the ones I grow it on. Anyway, so it does show my setup. It's not in the perfect place, but it does work. Thanks.